Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joy DeBolt. I'm on the marketing department here at SAS. Thank you so much for being with us at SAS Innovate. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming our speaker from our wonderful partner, Nodalize, Quinten Van Dissel. Quinten, I will bring you up on stage. Let's give him a warm welcome.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so first of all, thank you, Joy, for the introduction. My name is Quinten Van Dissel, data scientist at Nodalize, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about embedding SAS Visual Insights into your operational apps. So before diving in, what you can expect this session, first I'll introduce Nodalize a bit, talk about who we are, what we do. Then we're going over to see what challenge manufacturers face in general. We'll dive a little bit deeper into the case description, so have a closer look at the specific use case that we tackled for this project, how we address those challenges, then what the solution actually delivers, where we are going next, how to reach us if you want to continue the conversation, and then last of all, I hope we have some time for Q&A. So let's get started by introducing Nodalize. Nodalize was founded in 2017 with actually one clear goal in mind, which is data analysis and analytics should be available to every organization. So not only the tech giants, but every organization of every size. Now, we want to empower organizations in such a way that it drives real business outcomes. So not just analytics, but complete solutions. So our services are built around three key pillars. So we have three teams, which is the analytics team, which I'm part of myself. We run an end-to-end analytics platform built on SaaS software. We have a software development team that focuses on building custom solutions tailored to specific business context. And then we have a cloud team because nothing, if not delivered with consistent performance, scalability and security. So we host your solution in the cloud as well. Now, together these pillars form solution as a service. We think security is very, very important, so we hold ourselves to the highest security standards. We are ISO certified, we are NEN certified, which means we can handle your healthcare data as well. At the moment we have over 50 global customers and 20 plus employees and counting. So we're still growing fast. Actually we're with 7 here this year. So we're doing good. Now, one of the sectors that we make significant impact in is manufacturing. And so we have over 10 manufacturing customers and they are all connected to the Hi app. But a little bit more on that later. So before we dive into the solution, I want to focus on the core problem that we see manufacturers face. So we noticed that there's high reliance on fragmented systems. So we have like a manufacturing app that where you can monitor and see the real-time data coming in. But then there's the need to export to CSV or to other data types before actually analyzing it, which you would need an external tool for. So there's this constant switching between apps and monitoring in one app and then analyzing in another one. So there's this delay in insights. It means that it's very reactive instead of that it's proactive in your decision making, and we felt like the real potential is not completely met. So To introduce our specific use case, the Hi app, which we built with our software development team in collaboration with Hi, is very central to this case. So this is an app where users can define their processes, properties, specification limits, completely tailored to their workflow. And then there's quality and process monitoring. So real-time data can be monitored, and if needed, can be manually changed or entered. And this is, of course, very crucial when human observation is involved, because sometimes there's wrong data input, and users need to manually change this. Now, there was also some possibility to view rudimentary visualizations, but this is actually where limitations kind of began to show, because there was like a desire to do some more complex analysis. So that leads us to the challenges actually of this case, which I kind of mentioned already, but so there's deeper analysis needed. We had to bridge the gap between just monitoring and actually doing some more complex analysis. Now, the access was decentralized, so that means that you have to switch between tools. You have a manufacturing tool, you have an external tool in which you do your analysis, and that leads to lots of duplicated effort, inconsistencies in interpretation, because one team or one team member is looking at something different than his colleague. He might even be using a different tool, and this is not really efficient, of course. So also, it takes a lot of time to switch between tools, because you have way too many manual actions to perform before you can get to the actual insights that you want to get. So that adds unnecessary complexity. Now, there also was some specific technical requirements from the customers that was not being met by the native feature of the app that we built. So that's where our solution comes in, which is fully integrated SAS Viya Visual Analytics dashboards directly into the Hi app, so the manufacturing app we're talking about. Now, this puts everything in one place, which means it's really easy to access, and there's insights about their data without ever leaving the operational interface that they're used to. So this is basically how our solution pipeline looks like. Like most projects, we start with data integration. So we need to retrieve the data, prepare it inside SAS Viya in order to build the ABTs that underlie the dashboarding. Then we have the dashboarding phase, in which we actually build the actionable dashboards, which we did with a combination of SAS Visual Analytics along with some JavaScript using the SAS extensibility with JavaScript to build some custom graphs. Then lastly, of course, we need to embed these dashboards that we built into the Hi app. So let's first have a look at the data integration part. So as a starting point, we took views that were created in the Hi app. So users basically they choose which processes and which properties to combine together into one view, and they choose a time range, and then that leads to some view that we wish to load into SAS Viya and build a dashboard on. So that's our starting point. We do this, the pulling it into SAS with API calls in a very programmatic and scalable way. And then next to that, we make sure that the process data and the configuration data are retrieved separately. So this leads to as few overhead as possible, basically. Then lastly, the process data is retrieved iteratively, and we make sure that only modified records are loaded, so that it's as efficient as possible, basically. So this is what the flow looks like. So we have a configuration table in which users can select which views they want to pull in, which views they want to see in their dashboards, basically. Then we compare it to the current ABT, so the current data that is that's actually viewable in the dashboards, and that together determines an action on what to do with this view, right? So then all we have to do is retrieve a token for authentication, fetch the necessary metadata, and then we can perform the appropriate action for every view. So now that all the relevant views have been ETL'd into Vaya, it's time for the dashboarding phase. And this consists of, well, basically 3 parts. So we wanted to go beyond standard real-time monitoring and complement what's already in the Hi app, which meant we built some visual analytics dashboards. Then next to that, we needed to handle the very specific requirements that the manufacturers had by embedding custom plot lead charts. And then the third thing is we wanted to make sure we're never limited. So we would be able to basically be able to handle every visualization that was needed by the customer, so that we can tailor the analytics experience to exactly what they need. So then this is what it looks like for the end users. So we see here a visual analytics dashboard fully embedded into the Hi app. On the left you see some process variables over time, which can be easily filtered dynamically by key categories that they use, like production line, packaging method, product class, product type, etc. And this leads to a way more interactive experience than they were used to, which means that they can explore their data easily within the Hi app. So on the right we have some graphs showing a breakdown of average yields across categories and time, so that they can easily monitor, okay, which products have like the most gains, or where are the most losses happening. So over to the specialized requirements part. So this, and we see this more often also in other sectors as well. Sometimes visual analytics, like the basic functionality of visual analytics, doesn't cover what the customer needs. So, but they have some possibilities to extend this. And in this case, there were very specific requirements, which were control chart overlays, which means you have to combine different chart elements and put them over each other, basically, with custom background zones for specification limits, which are very dependent on the process and property, of course, and then also change over time. So these are customization needs that we couldn't solve within visual analytics itself. So we used JavaScript to do this. And yeah, you can see very easily the difference in charts here, where the bottom one is a chart using JavaScript, and then the top one is a chart using the functionality of Visual Analytics itself. So another thing that users wanted to do was explore the relationships between multiple process variables, but do it in a very dynamic way. So within Visual Analytics, the visuals are static in terms of scatter plots in this case, and that really falls short for their needs. So we solve this by using, again, by using Plotly, JavaScript library, and in this case, any number of variables can be selected, and the relationships update instantly, which is also a big boost for their exploratory analysis. So in this example, we see that 2 variables have been selected, but any number of variables can be selected. So in this case, it's 4. In this case, it's 6, and as you can see, the visuals update accordingly. So the question now is, of course, how did we do this? And that's pretty cool, if I say so myself. So we used the data-driven content object, which is a very flexible object within Visual Analytics, in which you can basically embed anything that's web-based. So that's like the basis for this solution. Then we have a Plotly visualization that resides within the HTML page that's embedded into the data-driven content object, and this whole object, of course, resides in Visual Analytics. Now we developed and debugged the code in Python first because it's way easier than doing it in JavaScript itself. So then when we finalized the version that we wanted to use, we just exported it as a JSON, plugged it into the report, and it was ready to go. And so the awesome thing about this, of course, is that any visualization is possible. So we used a framework and an approach that is very reusable in any context that's needed. So just to show some kind of random examples, on the left we have a Voronoi diagram, which shows the region closest to each airport in the United States. We have a volcano contours plot, which shows the elevation, in this case, of Mount Eden in Auckland, New Zealand. And then for our software developers, we have a core dependency diagram, which shows the dependencies among a software class hierarchy. So the number of imports between and within packages. And a fourth example is actually the dashboard that we're using at our stand here, which we made for our reaction time test. It's also made in JavaScript, and it looks really cool, if you ask me. So then, of course, we have the last step, which is actually embedding the dashboards into the Hi app. Now, this embedding phase actually consists of roughly four key steps, which is including the JavaScript SDK libraries into the app. There are different possibilities to do this. You can reference SaaS-hosted URLs, or you can download the libraries and host them locally yourselves. So we opted for the latter because of version control. Then the second part in this would be to initiate authentication from the app. There's also different possibilities to do this. You can use SaaS Logon, you can use single sign-on, third-party OAuth providers, among others. Then the third step is to select and embed the reports or objects using methods available within the SDK. And then lastly, you have to make sure that bidirectional communication is set up. So the interactions within your app and the interactions in your reports correspond to each other, so they can so it works together as a whole, basically. So a little bit about our personal embedding journey, because it wasn't always smooth sailing. So like I mentioned before, we opted to do local hosting as for the SDK packages to ensure version control, and no hidden surprises were encountered due to updates. At least we had hoped so. Then there was this kind of annoying thing. It was not a huge blocker, but there were some path inconsistencies within the SDK packages, which meant that some packages had different paths, so they were inconsistent, and we had to do some fine tuning, some extra work to make sure everything works smoothly. There was this thing where there was a naming conflict between the SAS SDK and our in-app code editor, which both used a variable that was called global, and then so we first loaded the first one and then the second one, and every time like it would randomly load one or the other, and then the other one would break, right? So we solved this by loading the scripts sequentially, so that it always worked. And then the last one, we had a cookie crisis, which took a long time for us, a little bit longer than we like to admit, to figure out. So at a certain point, the embedding worked, the authentication worked smoothly, the reports were loading correctly into the report. But then at a certain moment, it didn't. And the SAS version we were running on hadn't changed. The SDK version hadn't changed. But it turned out that our IT department flipped a toggle that disabled third-party cookies, which was of course great for security, but it broke our SDK communication. So everything went red. And we had no idea why, basically. So it took us a little while to figure out, but we reconfigured everything so that SAS and our app ran under the same base domain, so that it wasn't third-party cookies, it was first-party cookies, and then everything works perfectly. Which is a really easy solution, of course. So then there's another aspect of the solution I want to touch on, which is the user management part, because of course in the starting situation, we have many apps which all have their own authentication. So now we have everything embedded within one app. It's of course great to make sure that authentication runs smoothly and you only have to log in once in the iApp. So that's how we set this up, because authentication on multiple tools is of course very time consuming and frustrating for users. So we built an SSO flow to make access secure and effortless. We have accounts that are created in Microsoft Entra ID. They are synced to our auth service, authentication service. Then rules from this authentication service are skimmed to SAS VIA. And when users log in into the Hi app, a session token is issued after Microsoft validation. If SAS dashboards are opened, SAS confirms the session with our authentication service, and everything works smoothly. Now this is another part. So we have multiple tenants within the Hi app, and of course you want to make sure that these tenants don't see reports from one another. So this is an undesirable setup where we have customer A, which can see report 1, report 2, report 3, but only report 1 and 2, so only the white reports, or the reports denoted in white, actually belong to customer A. So they should only have access to these and not the gray one. So how we solve this, and this is actually the setup that we would like. So customer A has access to report 1 and 2, and customer B has access to report 3. So we added tenants in our authentication service and not on an application level, so that every tenant basically has access to only to their reports and only their reports. So we skimmed these groups to SAS, and then everything is synced. Okay, so this is a little screencast of our solution in action. So you can see the Hi app. There's a login with a Microsoft account. Then we get into the app. We select an organization, so a tenant. Of course, every tenant has only access to their own organization. We can scroll through processes, properties. Here we see a log sheet with the real-time data. You can switch between processes, between properties. Here we see some rudimentary visual. There is a possibility to manually change the data that's here. We can switch to the dashboards, and as you can see, there's no extra authentication necessary. Here we see the process variables in some more detail. And this is all completely embedded within the app. So here we see the JavaScript libraries that were used to create these plots, and it all changes instantly. So what are the key takeaways from this project? What did we achieve with this solution? Well, we embedded dashboards directly into the app, into the operational app, eliminating the need for our customers to switch between tools back and forth. And this accelerated, of course, their decision-making process. We were able to meet very specialized and specific visualization needs with minimal overhead, thanks to the Plotly library in JavaScript. And thanks to our modular architecture, we can reuse this approach and quickly customize solutions per customer, depending on their specific needs. So all in all, this brings analytics much closer to operations than before. So of course, no project is ever over. So we're also looking into some next steps. Now, we would also like to implement some real-time dashboards using Visual Analytics. So set up a live data connection between SAS and the data. We would like to create something like a custom library of reusable visual components, so that you sort of have like a customizable plug-and-play environment where you can set up the graphs that you want as a user. Then we have in store hopefully some recommendations. So we would like to introduce AI-assisted recommendations where we can flag anomalies. So for example, hey, we're seeing that this batch shows unusual variance. Maybe you should look at it, or something of the likes. And also, we're very much looking into model building, so doing some more complex analysis as well to forecast outcomes and visualize this with confidence intervals so they have even more insights than they already have. So that's basically it. I think we have some time for questions, ideas from you, or discuss some possibilities. And yeah, thank you.